Do you believe there are still strange treasures on this planet that most of the world has never seen with their own eyes? Some are natural wonders, shaped over millions of years, where water, fire, ice, and stone have combined to create landscapes that seem to exist only in the imagination. Others lie deep within forests, deserts, high mountains, or remote regions so isolated that they have almost disappeared from modern travel maps. Hidden among these untouched lands are also remarkable structures built by humans, quietly standing as traces of extraordinary dreams, beliefs, and creativity. Today, join us on a journey around the world to uncover forgotten hidden gems, where every destination is more beautiful, mysterious, and unbelievable than you could ever imagine. Can you believe Chaka Salt Lake can make the ground almost disappear before your eyes, making every step look like you are walking through the sky? Spreading across about 41 square miles, equal to more than 14,000 soccer fields, the lake creates a huge white space that seems to have no clear end. This special scene appears because a very shallow and clear layer of water sits on top of hard salt, helping the lake reflect the sky like a natural mirror. Besides its reflective surface, this place also has large sculptures carved completely from salt, with some weighing thousands of tons. In the middle of this white landscape, an old railway runs straight into the lake, creating a strange contrast between human traces and nature. Because the water level is only about 1 inch, the horizon almost disappears, making the whole space look like a giant mirror connecting the sky and the ground. In the dry desert plains of Kazakhstan, Kizil Kup stands out like a giant slice of tiramisu, where each colored layer is stacked so clearly that it looks almost unreal. This strange look comes from dark red, white, chocolate brown, and pale orange rock bands stretching across the mountain slopes like sediment layers cut open by time. The white layer that looks like cake cream is actually calcium carbonate, formed from the shells of countless tiny sea creatures that once sank to the bottom of an ancient ocean. When that ancient seabed dried out and became exposed to air, iron minerals inside the clay oxidized, creating red-orange bands like the ground was slowly rusting. Because of that, the colors can fade under the noon sun, but at sunrise or sunset, the whole mountain range glows like the surface of Mars. Beneath that desert-like appearance is a prehistoric graveyard, where giant shark teeth and marine reptile fossils are still locked inside the red clay. Red beach makes a strong impression because it does not appear with white sand or blue water, but with a bright red carpet of grass covering the wetland. From above, the marsh covers more than 50 square miles, equal to over 18,000 soccer fields, stretching out like a red carpet with almost no visible end. Close to the muddy ground, this red color appears when the salt level rises, causing the salt-tolerant grass to create red pigment to protect itself. When the tide moves and the wind blows across it, the red grass forms wave-like lines, making the whole ground look like a moving sea of fire. In the middle of this natural scene, black oil pumps still operate, creating a strange contrast between industry and nature. Along the zigzag walkways, reed forests about 10 feet tall surround the red area, creating a home for the rare red-crowned crane. You have seen waterfalls drop from mountains, but horizontal falls makes the whole ocean look as if it is being torn sideways and forced backward through a giant crack in the rock. This strange effect does not come from height, but from extremely powerful tides being squeezed into two narrow sandstone gaps, creating a water level difference of about 13 to 16 feet on each side. That difference creates enormous pressure, forcing millions of tons of seawater to rush through the rock opening at violent speed. As a result, the calm sea suddenly boils into white whirlpools, creating the feeling of a waterfall dropping sideways across the ocean. The scene becomes even more intense as turquoise water is trapped between rusty red cliffs, sandstone shaped by sun, wind, and sea salt for nearly 2 billion years. But the most dangerous part is that the falls reverse direction twice a day with the tide, and the speedboat crash into the rock wall in 2022 proved that this beauty is never gentle. While other waterfalls often make people think of clear blue water, Huku Waterfall shocks viewers with a muddy yellow flow full of sand and silt. Especially during the flood season, about 35 cubic feet of falling water can contain up to 1,102 pounds of mud and sand, making the waterfall much heavier and thicker than a normal one. This powerful scene happens because a river, about 984 feet wide, is suddenly squeezed down to only 66 to 98 feet between rocky cliffs. Because the current is forced through such a narrow space, people in the past had to pull boats around it on land, leaving deep rope marks on the rocks over many centuries. When the muddy water crashes into the deep gorge, yellow spray rises under the sunlight and sometimes forms strange, bright rainbows. This special power is why Huku Waterfall once appeared on the back of the 1980 version of the 50 yuan note as a major symbol of China's landscape. Unlike any desert Americans usually imagine, Bajira appears like an ancient seabed drained dry, leaving an entire land white as bone under the Kazakh sun. That strange white color comes from layers of chalk and salt left behind after an ancient ocean evaporated over millions of years. Because the white ground reflects light so strongly, the daytime sun can blind the eyes and make the hot air in the distance shimmer like a mirage. From that dead dry surface, two giant stone pillars rise sharply like fangs, creating a frightening landmark under the empty blue sky. The harshness becomes even stronger when the ground can heat above 113 degrees Fahrenheit by day but drop below freezing at night. Weathering slowly carved into the ancient seabed, separated the rock masses from the ground, and left white pillars more than 656 feet tall standing in the desert. From a distance, the ebon ice caves look like a crystal cave growing inside an American forest, but the truth is that they are only a giant curtain of ice hanging in front of a cliff. This visual trick is what makes the place special, because visitors think they are about to enter a mountain, while they are actually standing beneath a seasonal ice roof. That frozen curtain appears when melting snow and swamp water seep over the rock edge, then freeze layer by layer in air colder than 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the water passes through tree roots and rotting moss before freezing, the ice columns are not pure white, but often turn pale yellow, gray, or amber brown. The closer you move, the more dangerous this beauty becomes, because the ground below is also hard ice, steep and slippery enough that walkers almost need ice cleats. When standing inside the hollow space behind the ice curtain, the light is split into thin strips by the ice columns, making the whole scene feel like a glowing ice prison in daylight. In the middle of a deep canyon in China, Ruyi Bridge catches attention right away because it does not run straight, but curves like a steel ribbon flying in the air. Although it is only about 328 feet long, the bridge has 3 curved paths woven together, creating a very unusual shape from above. This open structure lets strong canyon winds pass through the bridge, helping it reduce shaking when the weather changes. Beyond its unusual structure, almost the entire bridge has no clear right angles or straight flat sections, making each step feel tilted and curved. In the early morning, fog hides parts of the steel, making the modern bridge between green forest and ancient cliffs look as if it is floating on clouds. But the part that makes many people stop in place is the transparent glass section, about 39 feet long, where a drop of about 459 feet appears right beneath their feet. If the Grand Canyon is an American icon, then Charan Canyon feels like the wilder version of Central Asia, where red rock has been torn into giant walls across dry land. The most striking feature of this canyon is that its sandstone cliffs are not smooth, but have been carved by wind and flash floods into pillars, stone towers, and deep cracks, like the ruins of an ancient city. Because some cliffs rise up to 984 feet, people standing below can feel as if they are being swallowed inside a giant red fortress. The canyon is not only massive, but also changes color with the light, as iron minerals in the rock shift from orange-yellow at noon to dark red at sunset. The contrast becomes even stronger because the upper land can reach 113 degrees Fahrenheit, while a cold river about 50 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit rushes through the bottom. This narrow and winding terrain forces wind to whistle through the rock cracks, turning the place into a wall of death that once made ancient traders travel around it for many days. Belogradchik rocks are not only strange red rock formations, but ancient layers of sand and gravel that once lay under a shallow sea about 230 million years ago. Under long-lasting pressure, those sediments were compressed into sandstone and conglomerate, then cut by wind, water, and temperature changes into giant stone pillars. Their twisted shapes created the feeling of humans and creatures turned into stone, giving rise to the legend of a nun who loved a monk and was petrified with her child. Beneath the pillars are narrow, dark, and deep cracks, where rough rock walls full of exposed pebbles close in until the sky looks like only a thin, blue line. The most unusual feature is the ancient fortress walls squeezed between the red rock peaks, turning natural ravines into defensive gates like a fortress locked into the mountain. Over 2,000 years, this stronghold trapped between the cliffs passed through Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman hands, with each empire expanding it into a stronger defense system. In a Ukrainian forest, this railway looks like a giant green door opening into a fairy tale, but the thing that created it is actually an industrial train. Every day, timber trains quietly pass through the forest, letting their cars brush against the branches and slowly shape them into a perfect U-shaped arch. Over many decades, trees on both sides kept growing upward and weaving together overhead, turning the railway into a living tube where sunlight only falls in small scattered spots. Summer makes the path glow emerald green, autumn covers it in yellow, orange, and red, while winter reveals black branches, like a skeleton in white snow. That changing seasonal beauty has turned the Tunnel of Love into a famous wedding photo spot, tied to a legend that true couples can have their wish come true if they walk through it hand in hand. But behind the dreamy scene is a real danger, because trains still run 3 to 4 times a day, and many visitors remain on the tracks until the final seconds just to take photos. In Kakaban, the fear of swimming among millions of jellyfish almost disappears, because this lake holds jellyfish that no longer sting painfully like those in the open sea. What makes this place even rarer is that the lake is not freshwater or seawater, but brackish water formed when rainwater mixes with seawater slowly seeping through porous limestone. The whole island was once an ancient coral atoll, later lifted above the sea by geological forces, accidentally trapping the lake inside like a separate world. In this closed environment, Cassiopeia jellyfish survive in a strange way by lying upside down on the bottom and lifting their tentacles so the algae on their bodies can receive enough sunlight for photosynthesis. To protect the untouched ecosystem, the wooden walkway is suspended through the forest without driving concrete piles directly into the original ground. When you dive into the clear water, golden-orange jelly bodies drift thickly around you, while mangrove roots along the lake edge become a living base for colorful sponges, sea anemones, and algae. At Kawaputi, the white glow does not look like snow or salt, but like the cold light of an acid lake releasing sulfur smoke inside a volcanic crater. Unlike a normal lake, the surface here looks almost luminous, but often has a pH below 1, acidic enough to turn that beauty into corrosive water. The name White Crater comes from the pale grey mud, ash, and volcanic rock surrounding the lake like a bleached ring. As minerals, temperature, sunlight, and oxidation change, the lake can shift from milky white to pale blue, turquoise, and deep green. Toxic gas and acidic soil make the trees near the shore dry out, leaving black, leafless trunks standing in sharp contrast to the bright water. When warm vapor mixes with sulfur smoke and there are almost no fish, birds, or insects, Kawaputi becomes silent like a living crater that is not meant for life. Before seeing the Golden Buddha at the top of Tiger Cave Temple, climbers have to pass more than 1,260 steep stone steps built onto a limestone mountain. Because this place is also a Vipassana meditation center, the journey does not only test the body, but also forces people to control their breathing in the hot, humid forest. The higher they climb, the steeper the stairs become, with some sections rising at about 70 to 80 degrees, making many people grip the railing tightly to keep going. After passing all the steps, the view opens up to tropical forest, limestone mountains, a sea of morning clouds, and a faint coastline in the distance. What amazes people is that many heavy materials at the summit were once pulled up by simple pulleys and human strength over many years. At the foot of the mountain, The meditation caves are darker and quieter, where stalactites and images of the human body remind visitors how fragile human life can be. Sipoholon looks like a patch of white snow that somehow fell into Indonesia's tropical heat, but what rises from it is actually hot steam from deep underground. That white color is not ice, but travertine stone formed when sulfur-rich mineral water pulls calcium carbonate upward and leaves it on the surface. Over thousands of years, each cooling mineral layer stacked on top of the last, turning the hillside into natural white stone terraces. From the cracks, the water can reach 104 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. So white steam keeps covering the pools and leaves a sulfur smell in the air. This clash of white stone, turquoise water, and deep green tropical forest makes the place feel like a piece of winter placed inside a jungle. The strangest part is that the half-moon soaking pools were not built by people, but slowly shaped into layers by the hot water itself over time. Even from far away, Hashiguiwa rocks looked like the remaining base of a giant bridge washed away by the sea, with more than 40 stone pillars lined up for nearly 2,800 feet. What makes this place strange is that the rocks are not scattered randomly like many coastal rock fields, but connect into one clear, long line in the sea. Over time, waves, wind, and tides have kept wearing the rocks down, making their surfaces gray, rough, full of small holes, and sharp around the edges. When the tide is low, the seafloor appears, and visitors can walk close to the base of the rocks to see how large each pillar really is. But when the tide rises, the lower parts are hidden underwater, making the stone pillars look as if they are growing straight out of the sea. Under the water-covered bases, oysters, sea moss, and sea anemones cling thickly to the rocks, turning what seems dry and barren into a home for many sea creatures. In the Bangui Islands, the sea looks so unbelievably clear that wooden boats seem to lose their support, floating above the bright sand below. The strange part is that this clarity does not only appear offshore, but also reaches deep into the rainforest, where blue lakes sit hidden beneath layers of tropical trees. The secret lies in the porous karst limestone underground, which works like a natural filter that traps mud, dirt, and sediment before the water rises into the lake. Because of that, when people look down to the lake bottom, they can see ancient tree roots that have stayed underwater for many decades without rotting, like a fossil forest beneath the water. The isolation of this marine region also makes Bangui a near-exclusive refuge for the Bangui cardinal fish, a rare species that is hard to find anywhere else on the planet. Farther offshore, the shallow coral shelf suddenly breaks into dark, deep walls where strong ocean currents feed an entire bright city of marine life. On the cold island of Hokkaido, Noboribetsu Hell Valley still breathes out white smoke, boiling water, and heat from an ancient volcanic crater about 24 acres wide. Even though the explosive eruption ended long ago, the deep heat below still keeps the entire valley bubbling, day and night. That same heat pumps nearly 800 gallons of mineral water every minute, turning this fierce land into a natural source for the surrounding hot springs. As sulfur and minerals are pushed upward with the steam, they leave strange patches of rust, yellow, lead-gray, and pure white across the ground like an open chemical map. Because of that, when people walk along the wooden path through the valley, they not only see thick smoke rising from the cracks, but also hear sharp hissing gas and boiling water bubbling right beneath their feet. In winter, white snow melts as soon as it touches the hot ground, revealing a strange boundary between the smoky grey valley and the dense green forest around it. Baikaz Gorge feels like a road swallowed into a mountain crack, where vehicles must move along the canyon floor between giant grey rock walls. The road twists again and again like a snake, turning a natural split in the mountain into an open tunnel that makes travelers feel surrounded by stone. The deeper you go, the closer the two cliff walls press together, making the space below feel suffocated, while the sky above slowly shrinks. Each bend blocks the view with a new wall of rock, while the sound of rushing water below strikes the narrow cliffs and echoes back as a heavy roar. Even more frightening, many upper rock sections jut outward like giant ledges hanging above people's heads and making the road below feel even more trapped. Walking through the narrowest section is a brutal psychological attack, because the feeling of tens of thousands of tons of stone pressing in and the sky squeezed into a tiny thread can make fearful people short of breath and panic. Unlike familiar clear blue lakes, Laguna Colorada appears like a giant red wound across the cold Bolivian highlands, making the ground look as if it has just been torn open. On that dark red water, white patches of salt and borax rise in scattered pieces, creating the feeling of ice blocks lost in a sea from another planet. This red color is not fixed, because salt-loving algae and mineral sediments constantly change with sunlight, wind, and the cloudiness of the water. When the wind stirs up the lake bed, the surface can shift from rusty brown to blood red in only a few minutes, making the whole scene feel alive and unstable. In that salty, cold, and harsh environment, thousands of flamingos still gather to feed, turning the frightening lake into a strange ecological contradiction. They are not born pink, but slowly absorb pigment from microorganisms in the lake, making their bright feathers a mark of the harsh life here. Bledug Kuvu does not erupt with bright red lava like familiar volcanoes, but creates a grey surface that keeps swelling and bursting under gas pressure from below. This strange phenomenon comes from methane gas trapped deep underground, constantly pushing liquid mud and salty water up to the surface. When the pressure becomes strong enough, the mud stretches into a thin dome, swells like a giant bubble, then explodes into splashes of wet mud. Because salty mud and gas keep rising non-stop, plants almost disappear, leaving behind a dry, cracked, rough grey field. But when small pools of salty water reflect the sunlight and sunset stains the dry mud orange-red, that grey field suddenly becomes surreal, like a movie scene. Even stranger, on a field that seems almost lifeless, small birds still fly low over the mud to hunt insects trapped in the sticky surface. On certain days at Fossa, the water does not simply fall down the cliff, but is blown back into the sky by North Atlantic wind, making it feel as if gravity has been bent. This happens because the waterfall drops about 459 feet in an exposed windy ocean area, where the falling water must face strong wind coming straight from the sea. Fossa does not fall in one clean drop, but breaks into two clear levels, forcing the water to crash against a middle rock shelf before bursting apart and dropping again. The white water falls between two smooth black basalt walls, creating a powerful contrast between bright water and dark stone. When the water hits the rock, the roar of the waterfall mixes with sea wind into a wall of sound, making it hard for people standing close together to hear each other. At the foot of the waterfall, the force of the water carves the rock into a foaming plunge pool, while thin green moss still clings to the basalt like a sign of life in a violent landscape. Hidden beneath Italian cliffs, Fiordo di Furore feels like a secret beach that boats can pass by without almost ever realizing it exists. The reason is that this beach lies at the bottom of a V-shaped crack, where two vertical limestone cliffs squeeze the space into a very narrow corridor. Seawater slips deep into the gorge with a bright emerald color, creating a strong contrast with the cold gray-white stone walls around it. On the steep rock pockets, old fishermen's houses cling to the cliff, showing how people once had to adapt to land with almost no flat ground. From the beach below, an arch bridge about 98 feet high cuts across the sky, where athletes once jumped from 92 feet into the narrow water channel at about 53 miles per hour. To erase the feeling of being forgotten, local people covered the rocks and houses with murals, turning the dark, narrow gorge into a strange, open-air gallery. Deep inside the highland forest of the Philippines, Lake Aco does not look like a peaceful lake, but like the hot breath of a volcano escaping from underground. The core of the lake is boiling geothermal mud, where the water can reach 212 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook food and cause severe burns if someone falls in. The danger feels even clearer because around the lake, the highland air remains cold, creating a strong contrast between boiling water and freezing air. That temperature difference makes thick white steam rise up, covering the lake surface and turning the scene into a misty place, like a doorway into the earth. But along the safer edges, the white and yellow mud is rich in sulfur, becoming a mineral source used for relaxation and skin care. For people to bathe here, the hot water must be mixed immediately with cold spring water, because if this system fails, the bathing pool can turn into a giant boiling pot. The United States, a land where nature reveals its grandeur through volcanoes, glaciers, canyons, waterfalls, and vast oceans. Across this enormous territory, hidden wonders appear with a beauty that can leave people almost speechless. Some places have captivated us through legendary movie scenes, from glowing cities to iconic symbols of the United States. Sometimes they hide on distant islands, beneath frozen glaciers, along wild coastlines, or inside extraordinary national parks. Today, we explore the most fascinating places in the USA, including lesser-known destinations whose strange and remarkable beauty is no less unforgettable. Bonneville Salt Flats. Under blinding white sunlight, Bonneville Salt Flats spreads out like an endless surface where the sky, salt, and horizon almost become one. About 15,000 years ago, this area once lay under a huge prehistoric lake, but as the climate became drier, the water evaporated and left white salt crystals on the ground. In summer, moisture leaves the salt crust under dry, burning heat, causing the surface to shrink and crack into tightly connected polygon shapes, stretching endlessly. After heavy rain, or during the cold season, only a thin layer of water a few inches deep can rest on the waterproof salt surface, turning the whole plain into a giant mirror, reflecting the clouds and sky. This white and unreal appearance is why Hollywood has often chosen this place to create scenes of dead worlds, alien planets, like in Independence Day or Pirates of the Caribbean, and even fake snow because salt does not melt under hot studio lights. But this salt layer is not always solid, because in 1846, the wheels of a migrant group broke through the surface and got stuck in soft mud below, helping lead to a winter tragedy. San Francisco. Beneath its famous steep streets, two giant tectonic plates quietly slide past each other by about 1 to 1.5 inches every year, making this city one of the most geologically active places in America. Its iconic fog forms when warm air meets ocean water only about 52 to 57 degrees Fahrenheit, then rolls across the hills like a tide flowing through the sky. More than 500 ships from the Gold Rush era remain buried beneath the modern city center, creating a hidden maritime graveyard below the streets. Major earthquakes revealed the advantage of wooden construction, as many flexible buildings survived better than rigid brick structures. On summer afternoons, cold fog can rush in at about 19 miles per hour, making tall buildings appear like islands floating in a gray sea of clouds. From the slow movement beneath the ground to the sound of foghorns echoing across the hills, this city feels as if nature is still quietly shaping it every day. Niagara Falls. Every layer of rock below is being worn away by a giant flow of water, because before humans controlled it, this waterfall once pushed its cliff backward about 3 to 5 feet each year. Over about 12,000 years, its power has cut a gorge more than 7 miles long, showing that this landscape is still moving and being reshaped. The water crashes down at speeds up to 68 miles per hour, creating enough force to grind limestone and sandstone into fine powder. About 60 tons of rock powder pass over the edge every minute, giving the water its famous emerald color instead of algae. The huge mist rising from the impact creates a wet microclimate, keeping nearby trees, moss, and rocks constantly covered in moisture. From the energy that helped launch the age of modern hydropower to the rainbows forming in its spray, this wonder is both a geological force and one of America's most famous natural icons. Molokini Crater. In the blue ocean, a crescent-shaped rim of rock appears like the last trace of a volcano that has sunk into the sea. In fact, this is the highest part of an underwater volcanic cone that erupted about 230,000 years ago, with nearly 80% of its mass still resting below the ocean floor. Because this rock has almost no soil, mud, or sand, the water around it is often clear for more than 150 feet and stays fairly clean even after storms. Its crescent shape blocks waves and ocean currents, creating calm water inside, while the outer side drops down a wall as deep as 300 feet. The inner crater is home to more than 250 fish species, and about 20% of them are found nowhere else on Earth. What makes this place remarkable is that above the water, it looks like a barren rock with almost no life, yet just below the surface exists a colorful underwater world filled with coral and vibrant marine creatures like a hidden city beneath the sea. Shiprock. From far away, Shiprock looks like a giant stone ship stranded in a sea of sand, with a towering central body and sharp rock ridges extending around it. This wonder is actually the dry skeleton of a 30-million-year-old volcano stripped by the desert until its frozen magma core was exposed. Stretching out from the main body are magma walls rising for miles, forming sword-like ridges that cast sharp shadows across the ground at sunset. The shape of the rock changes strangely from each angle, sometimes like a spiky Gothic castle, sometimes like folded bird wings. Because its shape changes with each viewing angle, Shiprock does not feel like a fixed rock, but like a landscape that shifts with light, shadow, and the observer's imagination. For native people, this is not just stone, but the sacred trace of a giant bird that once saved their ancestors and then turned into rock in the desert. New York City. Each year, this megacity sinks about 1 to 2 millimeters under the weight of more than 1 million buildings, as if it is slowly lowering itself toward the ocean. Although famous for its concrete skyscrapers, it has about 520 miles of coastline, longer than many famous coastal cities combined. The city's natural deep harbor is a legacy of a glacier about 1,000 feet thick, which melted away about 20,000 years ago. About 80 feet underground, thousands of tons of gold are stored in one of the most secure vaults in the world. Above the ground, about 800 languages exist together, making this one of the greatest cultural crossroads in human history. Twice each year, the sunset lines up with the street grid, turning the concrete canyons into rivers of red light stretching toward the horizon. Haleakala Crater. At more than 10,000 feet in freezing air, this huge depression looks like a volcano crater that has just opened, but it is actually a valley carved by water and ice over millions of years. The peak rises more than 10,000 feet above sea level, but from its base on the ocean floor, the whole mountain reaches over 30,000 feet, even higher than Everest. The depression is about 7 miles wide, 2 miles long, and nearly 2,600 feet deep, large enough to make everything on the floor look like a tiny model. The cinder cones inside may look like small mounds from far above, but many of them are actually over 1,000 feet tall, almost like skyscrapers. Although it stands in the tropics, the high air can become cold enough to freeze, while far below, people still live in warm sunlight and blue ocean air. The red, orange, yellow, and black ground, like the surface of Mars, blends with a rolling sea of clouds below your feet, making this wonder feel both ancient and almost otherworldly. Koala Range. Like a green wall rising almost straight into the clouds, this range is actually the remains of a giant shield volcano that began erupting about 2,500,000 years ago. The cliffs, about 3,100 feet high, block ocean trade winds, forcing wet clouds upward until they cool and release rain. Inside, porous basalt works like a huge sponge, absorbing rainwater and filtering it into aquifers that feed the island's freshwater supply. The deep grooves on the cliffs were not made by glaciers, but by tropical rain cutting into hard rock for millions of years. From far away, moss, ferns, and green plants cover the slopes like a giant emerald curtain with regular folds. After one rainstorm, hundreds of temporary waterfalls can pour down at once, then vanish when the sky clears, as if the mountain has breathed out water. Las Vegas. In a dry desert that receives only about 4 inches of rain each year, this city glows like a giant electric oasis, clearly visible from space. Tens of millions of Howell, ED, and neon lights create a bright halo, making it one of the most striking urban sights on Earth at night. To maintain lakes, fountains, and green spaces in the desert, each person here indirectly uses more than 200 gallons of water every day. Behind that luxury is a giant water recycling system, where wastewater is cleaned and sent back to support artificial landscapes. There was a time when nuclear tests about 65 miles away turned the night sky into giant flashes, drawing crowds to watch from a distance. From glowing structures in the desert to flowing water where it should not exist, Las Vegas shows how humans can rebuild an entire world in one of the harshest lands. Kualoa Valley. Like a forgotten prehistoric world hidden among giant green walls, this valley is actually the exposed core of a shield volcano that partially collapsed about 1,500,000 years ago. The surrounding cliffs rise more than 2,000 feet high and plunge almost straight down into the valley floor, creating a rare and dramatic landscape. The deep grooves running across the mountainsides were not formed by earthquakes or glaciers, but by about 2 million years of tropical rain carving into hard basalt rock. Beneath the surface, porous volcanic rock works like a giant natural filter, absorbing and storing fresh water from frequent rainfall. Moist ocean air is often trapped by the cliffs, creating a unique microclimate where sunshine and rain can appear almost at the same time. Whenever heavy rain falls, hundreds of temporary waterfalls pour across the moss-covered walls and vanish when the sky clears, as if the valley has just breathed out water. North Shore. When winter arrives, the calm ocean suddenly becomes a giant stage where walls of water up to 50 feet high crash toward the shore with frightening power. These waves are not born here, but are pushed across thousands of miles of the Pacific by distant storms before reaching Hawaii's coast. When deep ocean water hits shallow volcanic rock and coral reefs, it is forced upward into huge, hollow wave tubes. Strangely, the same coast can become calm in summer, when the water turns clear and gentle like a natural swimming pool. On rough sea days, each crashing wave can make the ground tremble slightly, while thick salt mist fills the air and leaves a sharp taste on your lips. This contrast between a wild ocean, quiet tropical forest, and a preserved rustic feeling makes this one of Hawaii's most fascinating coastal wonders. Unalaska Island. Among cold seas and thick fog, this island is never truly still, because it sits on the violent edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire. Here, tectonic plates press together about 3 inches each year, so earthquakes and underground magma keep shaping the volcanic land. Its harsh climate creates willy-waw winds when cold air rushes from the mountains to the sea at speeds over 120 miles per hour. Although summer covers the hills with moss and more than 150 wildflower species, the island has almost no natural trees because of thin soil, strong winds, and frozen ground. Thick fog can swallow a whole mountain in minutes, while black sand made from volcanic glass makes the coast feel like another planet. Against this wild backdrop, rusty traces of war make the island one of Alaska's strangest and most rugged wonders. Mendenhall Glacier. From a distance, this wonder looks like a giant crystal ribbon crossing the cold mountains. Yet each year it quietly retreats about 130 to 160 feet. Its brilliant blue color does not come from the sky, but from immense pressure that removes air bubbles in the ice and reflects mostly blue light. In its deepest sections, the ancient ice is more than 1,000 feet thick and stretches about 13 miles, forming a massive frozen landscape that dominates the valley. Since 1929, its edge has pulled back nearly 2 miles, showing how dramatically the landscape has changed over time. Places that were once steep ice walls for early explorers have now become open water after decades of melting. As the glacier grinds rock into fine mineral powder, that dust floats in the water and turns the entire scene into a glowing turquoise landscape. Yellowstone National Park. Beneath forests and mountains that seem peaceful, Yellowstone actually sits on the collapsed mouth of a giant supervolcano still simmering underground. The magma chamber below is about 50 miles long and 12 miles wide, while the rock between the ground and boiling lava is only about 3 to 4 miles thick in some places. This pressure helps create about 1,500 to 2,500 earthquakes each year, mostly too small to feel, but proof that the underground world is never asleep. On the surface, hot pools glow blue, yellow, orange, and red, not from chemicals, but from heat-loving bacteria living at different temperatures. Steam, boiling mud, and sulfur gas keep rising from cracks, turning the landscape into a giant geothermal laboratory of Earth. Protected in 1872 as the world's first national park, this place is both a natural wonder and a reminder that the planet is still alive beneath our feet. Antelope Canyon. It feels like walking through a river of stone under the desert, where the flowing walls were once Jurassic sand dunes about 190 million years old, later pressed into sandstone. The canyon cuts about 120 feet into the ground, but some passages are less than 3 feet wide, making the walls feel as if they are closing around you. This landscape is never fixed because each storm season sends flash floods through the narrow gap, slowly smoothing and reshaping the stone. That moving water carved the smooth spiral grooves, making the sandstone look like soft ribbons of silk flying in the wind. Around midday in summer, sunlight slips through the cracks above, hits floating desert dust and forms bright beams reaching the canyon floor. As daylight moves through the narrow canyon, the rock shifts from cool gray to orange-red and pale purple, turning this place into a living gallery of time and light. Florida Keys. Stretching across the ocean like a fragile thread, this island chain is protected by a living coral reef more than 168 miles long, one of the largest reef systems in the world. This giant biological wall absorbs much of the power from offshore waves, helping the low islands behind it survive in the open sea. Even though the chain extends for hundreds of miles, its highest natural point is only about 18 feet above sea level, making it highly vulnerable to rising oceans. Mangrove forests cling to the coral foundation, with special roots that filter salt and trap sediment, slowly building new land over time. Along the only highway connecting the islands, the view creates a sharp contrast between deep, dark blue water on one side and clear turquoise shallows on the other. This blend of coral reefs, mangrove forests, and the surrounding ocean makes this place one of the most unique coastal ecosystems in the United States. Nakalele Blowhole. On the black volcanic rock, the ocean seems to find a secret escape route and shoots back into the sky as a violent water column. This phenomenon begins beneath the rock surface, where an underground lava tube facing the ocean forces large waves into a space that becomes narrower and narrower. When the water is strongly compressed and cannot spread sideways, the pressure pushes it out through the opening above, sometimes blasting it up to about 100 feet. The deep roar before each eruption is the sound of water and air being squeezed inside the rock cave, making the ground feel as if it is shaking lightly under your feet. Around the opening, cooled basalt rock has resisted erosion for thousands of years, while sea salt and moisture turn the surface rusty red. When sunlight passes through the salty mist, rainbows appear and disappear with each burst, turning this place into a wonder that is both beautiful and full of natural power. Lake Superior. A single drop of water can stay here for nearly 191 years because this giant lake holds about 2,735 cubic miles of fresh water and works like an inland ocean. Although its surface sits about 600 feet above sea level, its deepest point reaches 1,332 feet, forming a cold freshwater abyss below sea level. This water body holds about 10% of the world's unfrozen surface fresh water, enough to cover all of North and South America under about 1 foot of water. More than 6,000 years ago, people mined pure copper along its shores, creating a trade network that stretched across the continent. When freezing air moves over warmer lake water, thick milky fog can rise and swallow the landscape in a silent white curtain. Because the water has few nutrients and very little algae, some areas are clear enough to see 100 feet down, making boats seem to float above deep blue empty space. Washington, D.C. Unlike any other American capital, this entire city was carved from land belonging to 2 states to create an independent district dedicated to national power. Its location was chosen at the farthest point reached by the tide, allowing ships to approach while reducing the risk of attack from the water. Boulevards as wide as 400 feet and giant white stone buildings were arranged to project the scale and strength of a rising nation. In 1814, much of the center of government was burned during war, yet it was rebuilt and became a symbol of resilience. The irony is, that more than 670,000 residents still pay federal taxes while lacking the same level of representation enjoyed by people in the states. Even the street naming system was designed like a navigation code, allowing people to estimate their distance from the center simply by hearing a street name. Devil's Tower. Among quiet grasslands and pine forests, Devil's Tower rises like a giant mass of earth, frozen in time. More than 50 million years ago, this place was a huge body of molten magma trapped underground before slowly cooling into solid rock. As the magma shrank, it cracked into thousands of tightly packed stone columns, many with hexagonal shapes because this structure releases stress in the most efficient, natural way. From a distance, the tower may look slender, but it actually rises 867 feet from base to summit and has a flat top about 1.5 acres wide. When standing close to its base and looking straight upward, the hexagonal grooves running along the tower slowly converge toward the summit, making the eyes lose their anchor and creating the feeling that the giant rock is leaning down toward you. In 1906, Devil's Tower became the first national monument in the United States, beginning a new chapter in protecting extraordinary natural wonders through law. Mount Rushmore. From stone older than complex life on Earth, 4 giant faces were carved into granite formed from a cooled magma chamber about 1,600,000,000 years ago. This rock is so hard that nature wears away only about 1 inch every 10,000 years, helping the main features survive for tens of thousands more years. To reach solid stone, sculptors had to drill away more than 30 feet of outer surface in some places before shaping the monument. About 90% of the work was done with dynamite, blasting away more than 450,000 tons of rock while cutting within only a few inches of the faces. Each face is about 60 feet high, with noses up to 20 feet long and lips about 18 feet wide, making people below feel tiny. The contrast between smooth human features and the wild, rough cliff around them makes this monument look as if it is rising from Earth's ancient stone core. Mono Lake. In extremely salty and highly alkaline water, this lake looks like an alien world, where white stone towers rise from the still surface. It is more than 760,000 years old, meaning it has survived many ice ages and preserved traces of ancient climate in North America for a very long time. The tufa towers are not random rocks, but calcium carbonate formations created when calcium-rich freshwater springs under the lake meet highly alkaline lake water. Over time, this chemical reaction builds hollow, pale, and sharp limestone shapes, making the shore look like a white bone maze from a vanished world. This strange landscape has appeared on a famous album cover and in dark Western films because it feels lonely, cold, and almost unreal. Although the tufa towers look like strong stone fortresses, they are actually brittle and easy to break, so the beauty here is powerful in appearance but fragile in structure. Bryce Canyon National Park. In a cold, high desert, red and orange stone pillars rise like an ancient forest of statues. But this place is not truly a canyon. It is a chain of eroded rock amphitheaters along a plateau edge. At more than 9,000 feet high, the area receives more rain and snow than the surrounding desert. So ice keeps cracking the rock and slowly pushing the cliffs backward. The red, orange, yellow, and purple colors do not come from light, but from iron and manganese oxidizing inside the sedimentary layers. At sunrise or sunset, the pillars reflect light so strongly that they seem to glow from within. Winter creates the most surreal scene, when white snow rests on fiery red spires, like burning matches dipped into ice. In the deep silence of these stone bowls, trees more than 1,600 years old still cling to the cliffs, making this wonder feel both fragile and enduring. Thor's Well. Among black volcanic rock piers like a giant mouth of the ocean, sometimes swallowing water downward and sometimes blasting it upward as if the sea is breathing through anger. Although it is often called the Gate of Hell and looks completely bottomless, the well is actually only about 20 feet deep. It was not created by an explosion or a meteor impact, but by the collapse of an old basalt sea cave slowly eroded by waves over thousands of years. What makes it special is that water does not only fall from above, because giant waves also rush through underground tunnels, build pressure, and blast powerful columns of water back into the sky through the mouth of the well. During winter storms, when waves higher than 10 feet keep crashing in, the entire sinkhole turns into a wild and unpredictable natural fountain. With no railing or fence on the wet, slippery rock, just one sudden wave is enough to turn the beauty of Thor's Well into a danger right before your eyes. Knik Glacier. Surrounded by permanent snow mountains, this glacier is about 25 miles long and flows from the high mountains down into the valley. The emerald blue color of the lake water and ice is not only caused by light, but comes from tiny rock flour crushed by the glacier as it moves across the ground. Its most striking feature is the glacier front, a huge wall of ice rising hundreds of feet at the end of the ice flow. Natural ice caves can form inside and around the glacier with beautiful blue arches, but they are extremely dangerous because they can collapse when temperatures rise. During the melting season, house-sized ice blocks can fall into the lake and create strong waves dangerous for nearby boats. During World War II, the area around the glacier was used by the US military for training in harsh weather, showing that this place is beautiful but far from gentle. Have you ever seen a place so beautiful that it is hard to believe it actually exists on Earth? Hidden among coastlines, forests, caves, lakes, and deserts are environments where unusual colors, extraordinary landscapes, and rare geological processes have created scenes that seem almost impossible to believe. Some of these places appear to challenge reality itself, with glowing waters, enchanted forests, underground cathedrals, and natural formations that look more like products of imagination than nature. Yet none of these wonders were created by humans. They were shaped over millions of years by natural forces acting in remarkable and unexpected ways. Today we explore some of the most surreal wonders on Earth, where reality can sometimes seem even more unbelievable than fiction. Las Salinas de Torrevieja, Spain. Like a piece of ocean dyed by imagination, Las Salinas de Torrevieja makes the line between reality and fantasy almost disappear. The lake water can contain up to 350 grams of salt per liter, about 10 times saltier than seawater, making this place feel like Europe's Dead Sea. Its bright pink color comes from microalgae and archaea, tiny organisms that create red pigments to protect themselves from strong sunlight in an extremely salty environment. Because it sits in a low basin below sea level, the lake works like an evaporation pan, where groundwater enters and leaves salt crystals along the shore. Under 104-degree Fahrenheit heat, the white lake edge sparkles like snow, while the water shifts from pale pink in the morning to vivid pink when the sun rises high. That sweet-looking beauty also feeds flamingos through red microorganisms, but the extreme salinity reminds us that this pink lake is still a harsh environment, not only a dreamy scene. Singing Sand Dunes, Kazakhstan. In a dry, rocky steppe, the singing sand dunes appear like a giant golden beast that can roar from inside its own body of sand. The dune is up to 2 miles long and 492 feet high, yet it stands alone between rocky mountains instead of being lost inside a vast desert. The sound does not come from the wind, but from billions of extremely dry quartz grains, each about 0.1 to 0.5 millimeters wide, sliding against one another and creating static friction. When the sand mass begins to slide down the slope, the deep rumble can reach 105 decibels at 65 to 105 hertz, making the ground vibrate through the chest. Although winds trapped between two mountain ranges have shaped it for thousands of years, the dune remains almost in place, like a strange balance between wind, rock, and gravity. At sunset, the dune glows like molten gold, while its roar echoes through the empty space, making this place feel both beautiful and mysterious, like a creature sleeping beneath the sand. Pink Sand Beach, Bahamas. The pink color of Pink Sand Beach is not a trick of light, but the tiny trace of marine life ground down over thousands of years. Foraminifera are only 0.1 to 0.5 millimeters long and live around coral, leaving red-pink shells behind when they die and are carried to shore by waves. The ocean keeps grinding those calcium shells into fine powder, then mixes them with white quartz sand to create a soft pink color that is never completely fixed. As tides and moisture change, the sand can look pale like chalk when dry, then become deeper pink when wet or after small storms. Offshore coral reefs keep the sea calmer, protecting the fine sand from being disturbed and making the water clear enough to see the bottom 33 feet below. This beach is therefore not only strangely pink, but also a fragile trace of a marine ecosystem still quietly leaving color on every grain of sand. Seven Sisters, United Kingdom. From a grassy edge that looks peaceful, Seven Sisters suddenly opens into a white stone wall, dropping straight into the sea, 253 feet below. That white color is the trace of countless tiny sea organisms with chalky shells, compressed between 65 and 100 million years ago. The chalk mass once lay under the seabed. Then ancient tectonic forces lifted it upward, allowing wind and waves to carve it day after day. The soft curves on the cliffs are dry river valleys from the Ice Age, while the black streaks are flint formed from ancient sponge remains. The cliffs still retreat inland by 12 to 16 inches each year, and after strong storms, several feet of rock can disappear overnight. That constant change makes Seven Sisters feel like a living sculpture, where the sea is still quietly reshaping the outline of England every day. Agtelek Karst, Hungary. Beneath Europe, Agtelek Karst opens like a fossilized ancient sea, where darkness has preserved Earth's history for 220 million years. The limestone here was once sediment from a Triassic tropical ocean, later hollowed by groundwater into a cave network more than 16 miles long. In that eternal darkness, more than 500 cave-dwelling species live almost cut off from the outside world, with many gradually losing eyes and pigment to save energy. Every stone column grows unbelievably slowly because stalactites gain only about 1/10 to 2/10 of a millimeter each year under constant drops of lime-rich water. The cave climate stays around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity near 95 to 100%, creating mirror lakes, white, yellow, and red stone curtains, and even fossil-like waterfalls. When sound echoes deep through the giant chambers, this place feels not only like an underground theater, but also like a maze of time where people can forget the world above. Rubjerg Knud, Denmark. Rubjerg Knud is not just a lighthouse in the sand, but a place where the sea and wind pull the land into a slow disappearance. Every year, the North Sea eats 1.5 to 2 meters into the coast, causing the cliff to keep collapsing and turning the shoreline into something that is always changing. At the same time, wind pushes the dune up to 30 feet inland each year, building a sand mass about 295 feet high that can bury anything weaker than itself. That is why red brick fragments sometimes rise out of the sand, not only as ruins, but as proof that an entire area was swallowed layer by layer. In 1899, the lighthouse still stood 656 feet from the cliff edge, but after more than a century of erosion, that safe distance has almost been erased by nature. Every new fold of sand and every piece of coast falling into the sea turns Rubier Knud into a landscape that never stands still, where humans can only watch before nature writes its next shape. Sundarbans, Bangladesh, and India. In Sundarbans, neither land nor ocean is in control, because the tides constantly redraw a world that is half water and half forest. Built from the sediment of giant rivers, this area covers about 3,900 square miles and has grown into the largest continuous mangrove forest on Earth. Because the mud contains almost no oxygen, millions of breathing roots rise up to 1 foot above the ground, making the forest look as if it is growing upside down. As the tide rises and falls by as much as 23 feet, mud islands appear and disappear, blurring the boundary between river, sea, and land like a mirage. Inside this maze of murky water, Bengal tigers have adapted to life with the tides, swimming across wide channels and hunting in brackish water. From above, the shifting network of waterways, trees, and mudflats changes shape again and again, making Sundarbans feel less like a forest and more like a living creature in motion. Gjola Lagoon, Greece. Between dry rock and rough waves, Gjola Lagoon appears like a blue eye carved straight into the shore by the sea. This pool is about 66 feet long and 49 feet wide, formed as waves kept pressing into weak points in sedimentary rock over millions of years. Because there is no underground spring, the water is refreshed only when waves higher than 7 feet spill over the rock edge, pulling old water out and bringing new seawater in. The small body of water traps heat from the sun, so it is often 9 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the open sea and saltier because of constant evaporation. Only a rock wall, about 7 feet wide, separates the calm turquoise pool from the dark blue ocean, rolling just outside. That contrast makes Giola Lagoon feel like a mythical infinity pool, but beneath its calm beauty is still a 10-foot deep rock basin that should be viewed with care. Monfragüe National Park, Spain. Under a sky where giant vultures glide like prehistoric shadows, Monfragüe appears like a green fortress locked between quartzite rock and ancient forest. This old forest covers more than 44,000 acres and preserves many plant species that have disappeared from other parts of Europe, like a living gene bank in a dry region. On cliffs about 400 million years old, more than 400 pairs of black vultures nest, using rising warm air like invisible elevators to fly without flapping their wings. They feed on carrion with extremely strong stomach acid, destroying disease and turning death into a cleaning link for the whole ecosystem. Below, humans have lived with nature for more than 1,000 years through open oak woodlands, harvesting cork while still keeping sunlight for the grassland. Night here opens a sky with almost no light pollution, letting the Milky Way appear above the old forest like a starry dome, protecting this wild land. Škocjan Caves, Slovenia. Beneath the peaceful hills of Slovenia, Škocjan hides a giant underground world where an entire river has carved through the earth for millions of years. That steady power created an underground canyon, more than 656 feet deep, and a cave chamber large enough to hold the entire Great Pyramid of Giza. At the bottom of the abyss, the icy river stays around 48 degrees Fahrenheit and keeps roaring, while the cave temperature remains close to 54 degrees Fahrenheit all year. During long, heavy rains, the water level can rise up to 328 feet in a short time, turning the seemingly frozen space into a violent underground flood. Along the rock walls stand stalagmite columns up to 49 feet high, built by tiny drops of water over more than 250,000 years. Endless darkness, echoing water, and a scale beyond imagination make Scotian feel like a real underground kingdom, where time and water carve the heart of the earth together. Mývatn, Iceland. In the cold land of ice, Mývatn feels like a calm lake, resting on ground that is still being torn apart by hidden fire. About 2,300 years ago, lava as hot as 2,192 degrees Fahrenheit flowed across wetlands, hit cold water, and exploded into countless pseudo-craters. This area lies on the boundary between two tectonic plates, where the ground is still being pulled apart by about 1 inch each year. Although the lake covers 14 square miles, it is very shallow, with an average depth of only 8 feet, allowing light and heat to reach close to the bottom. Around the lake are acid mud, sulfur steam, twisted basalt, and ground-stained iron red, sulfur yellow, and calcium white, like a toxic alien planet. Yet beneath that harsh landscape, groundwater passing through lava rock creates hot mineral pools between 97 and 104 degrees Fahrenheit, turning Mývatn into a place where ice, fire, and life exist together. Playa de las Catedrales, Spain. Each day, the ocean reveals Playa de las Catedrales for only a few hours, as if allowing people to briefly enter a cathedral that truly belongs to stone and tide. Its 500-million-year-old cliffs were formed from ancient sea mud, later compressed into hard slate and quartz under the pressure of time. When the tide shifts up to 13 feet every 6 hours, the beach sometimes disappears underwater and sometimes exposes corridors, deep caves, and giant arches. Those arches were born as waves carrying sand and salt, kept grinding into weak cracks, slowly widening them over millions of years. But the same process that created this beauty is also destroying it, because arches up to 98 feet high are becoming thinner and may collapse when gravity overcomes the rock. Across wet sand reflecting the blue sky, wind hums through hollow caves like an organ, making this place feel like a Gothic cathedral of the sea, and as fragile as the moment before the tide returns. Isola Bella, Italy. From an almost useless barren rock, this island was transformed into an extreme proof of human ambition to control nature. Before the 17th century, it was only a dry surface in the lake with little living soil and almost no value to local people. That is why the terraced garden, shaped like a truncated pyramid, with 10 levels, is not just beautiful scenery, but an attempt to build an entire artificial world on bare stone. To turn that bare rock into a living garden, people had to guide and control lake water constantly, so the plants, fountains, and whole artificial landscape would not dry out. When music and art take place here, the surrounding water becomes a layer of resonance, making its luxury something people can not only see, but also hear. In 1797, Napoleon Bonaparte stayed here, and his sense of awe shows that Isola Bella is not simply a beautiful island, but a statement of power made from architecture and nature. Gulpiyuri Beach, Spain. Gulpiyuri is a paradox of nature, a beach with waves and tides, even though it lies completely inland. More than 328 feet from the ocean, this limestone sinkhole is connected to the sea by underground tunnels carved by water for more than 2 million years. Those tunnels carry seawater beneath the land, making the tide inside the pool always move later than the rise and fall of the open ocean outside. Even in hot summer, the water here stays around 59 to 64 degrees Fahrenheit because it passes through dark, cold caves before appearing on the surface. The white sand underfoot was not created in place, but came from sand and shells on the seabed, carried inward by underground water, and collected over thousands of years. Inside this enclosed space, the small pool still breathes with the rhythm of the distant sea, turning Gulpayuri into a real illusion in the middle of the land. Thermal springs of Saturnia, Italy. In the white mist rising from the ground, Saturnia looks like terraced pools, quietly boiling with the heat of the earth. The underground spring flows continuously at about 132 gallons per second, enough to fill an Olympic swimming pool in less than 1.5 hours. This water is rain that soaked underground at least 40 years ago, passing through porous volcanic rock before returning to the surface with minerals. Its temperature stays around 100 degrees Fahrenheit all year, close to human body temperature, while underground gases make the surface bubble as if it were being heated. Over thousands of years, calcium in the water has naturally hardened into rounded white stone steps, creating milky blue, natural bathing pools. On misty mornings, the sound of falling water and hot steam make this place feel like an ancient spa built by stone, gas, and water themselves. Green Lake, Austria. A winter park can disappear beneath cold green water, and that is what makes Green Lake feel like limestone mountain magic. In winter, this place is only a dry hollow 3 to 7 feet deep, but when snow melts in May, the water can rise to about 39 feet in just a few weeks. Even in midsummer, the water stays between 39 and 46 degrees Fahrenheit because it comes directly from snow and ice, cold enough to shock the body if someone falls in suddenly. Visibility can reach 164 feet because mountain meltwater is filtered through countless limestone cracks, leaving mud and impurities behind before flowing into the lake. When the water rises, benches, paths, and wooden bridges sink below the surface, while grass and wildflowers remain underneath like a park temporarily reclaimed by nature. By mid-July, the water drains back into underground cracks, returning the dry ground and leaving only the memory of an emerald lake that wakes for a few months each year. Lake Tahoe, USA. Lake Tahoe is not blue only because of the sky, but because its pure water turns light into a deep blue that feels like an ocean abyss. The lake has existed for about 2 million years, far longer than most North American lakes that formed after the last ice age. It holds about 39 trillion gallons of water, enough to cover all of California under a layer of water more than 1 foot deep. Its depth of 1,645 feet makes the bottom drop like a giant underwater cliff, where only a few steps from shore can lead to water hundreds of feet dark. Every day, about 330 million gallons of water evaporate into the dry mountain air, but the huge water mass keeps the lake from freezing even during -4 Fahrenheit winters. At twilight, cold mist rises from the lake while granite cliffs turn pink-orange, making the whole scene feel like a high mountain world that is both real and dreamlike. Yeta Grotto, Lebanon. Beneath cold limestone, Yeta Grotto opens like an underground palace carved by rainwater over millions of years. The cave system is nearly 6 miles long, but humans have accessed less than 30%, while the deeper parts remain in primitive darkness. Each drop of water seeps through limestone, dissolving and rebuilding minerals extremely slowly, with some formations needing about 100 years to grow only half an inch. That is why the cave holds giant stone columns, curtains as thin as silk, and a 27-foot stalactite hanging like a stone sword. Below, the underground river not only reflects the cave ceiling like a mirror, but also serves as an important freshwater source for more than 1.5 million people. Even when the outside heat can reach 104 degrees Fahrenheit, this underground world stays around 61 degrees Fahrenheit all year, making stone, water, and darkness feel preserved inside a cold box of time. Látrabjarg Cliffs, Iceland. At the far western edge of Iceland, the land does not end gently, but suddenly rises into a living wall where rock, wind, and millions of seabirds move together. The cliff line stretches 9 miles and rises up to 1,444 feet, dropping straight into the ocean, like the giant black and white edge of a sliced continent. The surreal fact is that this place is often seen as the western edge of Europe, while the rock beneath it actually belongs to the North American tectonic plate. During breeding season, 1 to 2 million seabirds cover the rock layers, making the vertical cliff look like a city built between sky and sea. The grass on top may look soft and safe, but underneath, birds can hollow it out into small burrows, making the cliff edge far more fragile than it appears. When white flocks fly backward through the cold wind, Látrabjarg no longer feels like an ordinary cliff, but like a surreal border between Europe, America, sky, and ocean. Nedi Massif, Chad. Hidden beneath the dead sand of the Sahara, Nedi feels like an ancient water storehouse locked inside sandstone, where life still quietly holds on in the drought. This plateau covers about 12,000 square miles and was formed from river sediments more than 300 million years ago, leaving countless hollow cracks inside like a stone sponge. Thanks to that structure, even though yearly rainfall is less than 2 inches and daytime heat can reach 122 degrees Fahrenheit, water still seeps deep, stays stored, and leaks out into small pools that do not dry up. Those isolated pools became the last refuge of small West African crocodiles, a species that survived 10,000 years of desertification by adapting to little water and little food. On the rock walls, thousands of 7,000-year-old paintings of swimmers, cattle, elephants, and giraffes prove this dry, dead land was once a green savanna with water. That is why Enedi's giant arches, red mushroom pillars, and cold, dark canyons are not only strangely beautiful, but also feel like the last memory of a Sahara that was once greener than today. The Giant's Playground, Namibia. Amid the harsh desert of Namibia, the Giant's Playground looks like the abandoned construction site of giants, where thousands of massive boulders appear carefully stacked by an unseen hand. These unusual dolerite rocks were born from molten magma that cooled beneath the Earth about 160 to 180 million years ago. As the rocks slowly contracted during cooling, natural columnar fractures formed striking geometric shapes that resemble giant hexagons and pentagons. Bright orange and yellow lichens spread across the surfaces, creating a dramatic contrast against the cold grey-blue stone under the intense African sun. With temperature swings of up to 54 degrees Fahrenheit between day and night, the rocks constantly expand and contract, gradually reshaping and polishing themselves through time. The name The Giant's Playground comes not from ancient legend, but from humanity's attempt to describe a stone landscape so strangely organized that it still seems beyond easy explanation. Poás Volcano, Costa Rica. From a volcano crater covered in white vapor, Poás appears like an alien lake breathing smoke, acid, and heat. The lake at the bottom of the crater has a pH between 0 and 1.5, making its grey-green water both strangely beautiful and extremely harsh. The crater is more than 1 mile wide and 984 feet deep, large enough for the mist above it to become a blurred dome, hiding the lake's surface. Below, magma heats underground water, so the lake temperature can shift sharply from 68 to 194 degrees Fahrenheit, making the surface constantly steam, as if boiling. That harsh beauty turns Poás into a surreal wonder, where people can see the fragile border between water, rock, toxic gas, and the heat inside Earth. Puzzlewood, United Kingdom. Under a blue twilight glow that feels as if it never ends, Puzzlewood appears like an ancient forest locked by time inside moss, roots, and broken stone. This place is a rare part of temperate rainforest, an ecosystem that now covers less than 1% of Earth's land. Beneath visitors' feet is 300-million-year-old limestone, formed from the shells of sea creatures when this area was still under the ocean. The strange deep cracks were not shaped only by water, but also by collapsed underground caves and iron mining activity dating back to Roman times. Moss, lichens, and ferns cover the rocks and soften every sound, while ancient tree roots crawl across the stone like pythons searching for soil. This dark, wet maze inspired eerie forests in fantasy literature, making Puzzlewood feel like an imaginary world that somehow became real. Tusua Ocean Trench, Samoa. Inside dense green land, Tusua Ocean Trench appears like a volcanic collapse that opened a path for the ocean to flow inland. The waterhole is nearly 100 feet deep, not like a normal pond, but like a giant hollow space carved straight into basalt rock. The strange thing is that the water inside still rises and falls with the tide, because an underground lava tube connects it directly to the Pacific Ocean. As seawater passes through porous basalt and mixes with freshwater springs, it is naturally filtered, creating a clear, emerald color. To touch the water, visitors must climb down a wooden ladder about 100 feet long, almost vertical between walls, covered with ferns and vines. When sunlight falls straight through the opening, this place feels not only like a natural swimming pool, but also like an underground doorway where land, water, and volcano meet. Cathedral Gorge, USA. In the Nevada desert, this place appears like an abandoned Gothic city, although every spire and deep canyon is shaped from volcanic mud rather than solid rock. Tens of millions of years ago, ash from massive eruptions fell into an ancient lake, then compressed into bentonite clay layers hundreds of feet thick. This clay can absorb up to 10 times its own weight in water, so when rain falls, it swells into soft mud, then shrinks and cracks under 100-degree Fahrenheit heat. Because the material is so soft, every rainstorm or strong wind directly carves away part of the landscape, making the earth walls visibly change within just a few decades. That erosion has accidentally created sharp spires, arches, narrow canyons, and folded walls like velvet curtains stretching across the desert. Late afternoon light awakens orange-red tones in the iron-rich soil, turning the pale grey maze into a scene like an earthen city quietly burning from within.